This is a preview of our bonus episode on Theatre of the Mind, the full version of which is available right now on our Patreon. We release these every month, and they're a little longer than our weekly episodes so that we can dive deeper into more complex topics. By supporting us on Patreon, you can also gain access to our new community Discord server to interact with us directly, as well as with other fans of the show. You'll also find video versions of our regular episodes up on our Patreon. By the way, we are aware that the audio quality on this episode isn't to our usual standard. That won't be the case for future bonus episodes. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the One Shot Show. You can only hear us in your ears. You're going to have to picture us in your mind's eye.
Ooh.
My name is Matt, your name is Mark.
It's true.
Today we're talking about Theatre of the Mind.
What is Theatre of the Mind, Matt?
Theatre of the Mind is a way of running encounters, and I'm going to use the word encounters because it doesn't just mean combat, in your tabletop RPG games that essentially uses the imaginations of yourself and your players. And what it does is it removes the need entirely for any of those newfangled maps and miniatures.
So you could say that actually 90% of any role-playing game that involves you describing stuff for your players going on adventures is Theatre of the Mind, which is only broken most commonly for combat.
Yes, and there are a number of reasons why that's kind of the standard, as in breaking that theatre of the mindness, that use of the imaginative space for combats, and they're very interesting. But when we talk about using Theatre of the Mind, we tend to talk about using it for combats as well, instead of switching over to a physical format. So, look, I'll throw this one to you first, because you do run a lot of games online.
It's true. An immense amount of games online.
And I assume that you are using some kind of VTT, virtual tabletop platform, to have that map, given that you don't have a physical table to lay it out on, instead of Theatre of the Mind.
Almost always yes, and in danger of immediately veering into another topic, the fact that people are paying me, which I know we never do, the fact that people are paying me to play a game online means you expect a level of production quality, which I believe we've already talked about, but it does mean that I'm always providing these beautiful digital artworks for people to move their little tokens around on and feel like a little bit video gamey and having that kind of beautiful veneer of professionalism. But I do run a lot of Theatre of the Mind through online games as well when the need arises, and often this might happen more often for people playing online, because if you don't have a piece of digital artwork set up and ready to go for your online tabletop, you are simply forced to.
Yeah, you said something really great there, which is when the need arises, and then you exactly described the need that might arise, which is when something occurs that you don't have something prepared for. And this is true of your in-person games as well, right? If you usually have maps and miniatures, and then suddenly something happens that you don't have a preset map for, that you've arranged and got, printed off somewhere, then you're kind of having to wing it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the physical world, you can use like gridded whiteboards, and there's all sorts of tricks.
You will have an erasable battle map. Sometimes you might just have a whiteboard. Sometimes it might be, and this is frequently what I've used, bottle caps to represent the relative positions of your characters.
A classic one. When they're fighting enemies that I don't have miniatures for, I just use stacked up dice.
Absolutely. Really good thing you can do, go to a pet store, buy a bunch of coloured marbles that people put in their fish tanks. Incredible buy.
Yeah. So an interesting thing with that, though, is even with that extra flexibility of, dry erase battle maps, and even just being able to have some really basic, like I've got a map that's just a green field, and I've got one that's just some cobblestone city streets. Like I've got some really bog standard ones that I can pull out in a pinch, and even then I don't usually like pulling those out. I prefer Theatre of the Mind for my combats.
Ooh, that is a hot take.
So, the reason for this, I think, to get into it, I kind of need to explain why people use maps and miniatures where possible. And it's very simple, right? When you look at the rules for especially something like D&D, but this is true for, I would say, the majority of commonly played tabletop RPGs.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the rules, like 80% of the rules
are for combat.
I will strongly agree. If you look at a character sheet for Dungeons & Dragons, 90% of your character sheet is dedicated to magic, attacks, and defenses that are used purely for combat.
Yep.
And often different systems will lean more or less into that. Typically very, very simple, like one-page systems will not have ranges or movement speeds or heights, but something like Lancer, which is like a mech suit battle system, that's entirely based on what you can do in combat and how you're building your Lancer, as it's called.
And so many of the rules in these systems are there to specifically support combat. And as you say, they often talk about things like distances, ranges for weapons,
they might
how
even
far you can move.
Talk about exactly how many squares or how much of the grid an effect takes up.
And look, that's all well and good, and generally we're using physical maps to support those rules. But I'm of the opinion that the map can often be restrictive when it comes to all the things that people say they really like about combats. Now, we did a whole episode on dynamic combat, specifically, how to make them sort of feel fresh and alive, and we did mention offhandedly the environment. And actually, I think that's one of the big limitations of physical maps, is it is very hard to make a really dynamic environment with different levels of verticality and wacky terrain and all of that when you've got essentially a flat-printed battle map. Instead, if you can describe a ravine with archers arrayed either side of the ravine, it's a trap that's been sprung. How are you going to get out of this? Oh, how high are the walls of the ravine? They're about 40 feet high. They look fairly sturdy and climbable, and then the rogue is like, I'm going to go climb them and see if I can take the people out from up top.
One of the huge advantages of Theatre of the Mind, besides having your players' imaginations do most of the work for you, because when you're describing this ravine, I am already filling in this entire environment visually for myself and looking around in my mind's eye to spot stuff that I can do and ask about.
Exactly.
As a DM, how can you facilitate that? What kind of things are you leaning into describing when your adventure is about to get into some kind of Theatre of the Mind fight?
We hope you enjoyed that special preview of our first bonus episode on Theatre of the Mind. You can find the full version right now on our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/OneShotShow. If you sign up to our Patreon, you'll also get access to video versions of our regular episodes, monthly bonus episodes, access to our community Discord server, and you can submit and vote on Q&A questions for our special Q&A episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.